This is it, episode 8, the final episode of the 8 seasons of the Soul series. And I want to start by saying, if you've been with me since episode 1, thank you, genuinely. This series has been one of the most meaningful things I've created for Holy Rebels. 8 episodes, 8 thresholds, a complete journey through the full arc of the human experience. And if you're new here, welcome. But also, go back and listen to all 8, because they're so rich and so alive. Each one stands alone, but together they form something useful. A real map for wherever you are right now in your own life, whatever the transition. This series isn't just a calendar. It isn't just nature lore or ancient tradition for its own sake. It's a framework you can locate yourself inside of, whatever season of life you're living through. Maybe you're in that burstingly alive energy of spring right now. Something new is forming. You can feel it. You're starting to take steps forward. Or maybe you're in your abundant summer era. You're in the middle of work, the expression, the full giving of what you have. Or maybe you're deep in the releasing work of autumn, letting go of an identity, a relationship, a version of yourself that's genuinely complete. Or maybe you're exactly at the threshold of today's episode, in the still, quiet, uncertain grace of winter. I love winter. When you can feel the land is resting, days are short, the fields are empty, the trees are bare, standing in nothing but their branches against the gray sky. The light arrives late and leaves early. There's a particular quality to winter air, isn't there? It's thin and cold and somehow honest. It doesn't soften the edges the way that the summer does. Winter makes everything visible in a different way. All structure and silhouette, no cover of leaves or heat haze. You see the shape of things as they really are. And that's exactly what this threshold is for. Today, we arrive at the 8th and final point on the Celtic Wheel of the year. Yule, the Winter Solstice, the longest night, and the turning point, the moment when the darkness reaches its maximum and the light begins very quietly to return. This is the threshold of trust, hope, renewal, and rest. The threshold of listening for what comes next. You're listening to the Holy Rebels podcast, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Mystics. I'm Nina Hirlaender, Franciscan sister, spiritual director, and founder of Dancing Spirit Tours. If you're a spiritual seeker or a mystic in the making, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Before we go into the Celtic Wheel and talk about what Yule specifically means, I want to acknowledge that this threshold, this midwinter moment of darkness and returning light, shows up across almost every wisdom tradition in the world. In Christianity, Christmas falls right here at Winter Solstice, the birth of the light into the world, the arrival of the divine into the deepest dark night of the year. It's not an accident. The early church fathers placed the feast of the Nativity at this astronomical turning point with intention. In Judaism, Hanukkah is the festival of lights. 8 nights of candles lit against the darkness, a celebration of endurance against all odds. In the Hindu tradition, Makar Sankranti marks the sun's northward return, the moment when light begins to strengthen. It's a harvest festival and a solar festival, a time of gratitude and renewal. In the Chinese calendar, the Winter Solstice festival, Dongzhi, is when families gather to eat together and honor the return of longer days, celebrating the balance of yin and yang, the turning of the cosmic cycle. Even the Islamic New Year carries themes of reflection and the new beginning year, a threshold moment of inner reorientation toward what really matters. Different cultures, different languages, different names for God, and yet every one of them arrives at this same point in the year and says, "Pay attention, because something new is beginning. Sit with the dark long enough for the light to find you." I love the Celtic Wheel of the Year because it follows nature's rhythms. It's written into the land, into the seasons, into the biology of the earth under your feet. You don't have to believe anything to feel the truth of it. The Celtic Wheel of the Year is not a religious belief. It's following nature's cycles. Just stand outside at dusk in December, and you'll know exactly what this threshold is teaching. It's Yule. The wheel has turned a full circle. The darkness has deepened to its maximum. And in that maximum darkness, the longest night, something shifts. The light begins to return. Today, you'll understand what Yule is asking of your soul and why this threshold catches so many of us off guard. You'll discover what living trust actually looks like, the difference between genuine waiting and stagnation. And you'll leave with a clear, practical way of inhabiting these seasons into your life when you are called to rest and reset. The winter solstice falls on December 21st in the Northern Hemisphere and June 21st in the Southern Hemisphere. It is the astronomical pivot of the year, the moment when the sun reaches its lowest arc and the night holds longest. In the Celtic tradition, this was not a sorrowful occasion. The darkness was something to be honored. Light returns because that is the nature of the cycle. The wheel turns whether you cooperate with it or not. But there is a difference between being pulled through a threshold unconsciously and crossing it with intention. Yule asks for intention. Specifically, it asks for an interior posture of trust. Think about what happens in the natural world. The seed is buried in frozen ground. The bulb has retreated deep below the surface. Above ground, there's no visible evidence whatsoever that spring is coming. The field is bare, the light is thin and brief. The trees look dead. And yet, in the hidden dark of the soil, the seed is completely intact. The life is there. It has simply gone underground. It is resting in readiness. The author, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, describes this as one of the most essential rhythms of the creative and spiritual life. She writes, "The deep soul cycles through seasons just as the natural world does, and the fallow time, the underground time, is the necessary preparation for what comes next." She's right. The seed doesn't apologize for being just a seed. It trusts the cold. It trusts the process it's inside of, even when that process is completely invisible. That is what Yule is asking of you. Trust the process you're inside of, even when nothing visible confirms progress. This threshold has a particular intensity for those of us who carry both psychological self-awareness and a genuine spiritual life. Because this is where two things we're often very skilled at, analysis and control, reach the end of their usefulness. The developmental psychologist Erik Erikson identified hope as the first and most foundational virtue of human psychological life. In his framework of 8 psychosocial stages, the earliest stage is built around one central question: can I trust? He observed that before a human being can do anything else, before love, before identity, purpose, integrity, the human being must first learn at the most basic level that the world is safe enough to exist in, that darkness will not last forever, that need will be met, that the caregiver will come. He called this foundational stance basic trust, and he argued that everything else in human development rests upon it. What strikes me is how closely this mirrors the spiritual teachings' understanding of hope. In the Western mystical tradition, hope is not optimism. It's not cheerful disregard of the facts, which is how we tend to define hope in the modern age. No. Hope, in its theological depth, is the orientation of the entire soul toward a God who is trustworthy. John of the Cross, the Carmelite mystic who spent years imprisoned in a cell barely large enough to stand in, he wrote some of the most luminous poetry about darkness that has ever existed. And he has a very specific thing to say about hope. He says, hope works by loosening the grip. When you hope in the way John describes it, you stop white-knuckling a particular outcome. You stop rehearsing the one scenario you've decided God should deliver. Instead, your hands are open. And in that opening, you become available to receive what is actually arriving, which is often something your planning mind would never have chosen, and which turns out to be exactly what you need. Hope, in John's understanding, isn't the feeling that things will go well. It's the willingness to keep your gaze on God even when you can't see what God is doing. And that's an entirely different thing altogether. Hope doesn't need evidence. Hope is the capacity to trust the darkness. This is Yule. Now, you might be standing at this threshold right now, and here's how you'll know. Something important in your life isn't clear yet. You sense something new is coming, but the shape hasn't appeared. You've done the releasing. The chapter is genuinely closed, but the next one hasn't opened yet. You feel the pull to stay inward, less interest in plans, schedules, output, more draw towards silence and space. Small things are moving you more than usual, perhaps a piece of music or a quiet morning, a kindness you didn't expect. There's something close to the surface that isn't exactly grief. It's more like tenderness, like readiness. And the intelligent, productive part of you is getting restless because it knows how to act and plan and figure things out. But it does not know how to wait. That restlessness is a signal that Yule has arrived. Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit priest, mystic, and visionary, wrote one of the steadiest pieces of spiritual counsel that I've ever encountered. He wrote, "Trust in the slow work of God." And then he went further, saying that we are impatient about everything. We want to skip the intermediate stages. We want the fruit without the long, slow gestation of winter. But this is not how transformation works. Only God, he wrote, could say what this new spirit gradually forming within you will be. The Yule threshold is where you practice being willing not to know yet. There's one mystic whose voice belongs to this threshold more than any other, and her name is Julian of Norwich. Julian was a 14th century English mystic who, at age 30, received a series of visions during a near-death experience. She spent the next 20 years alone in a small cell attached to a church in Norwich, England, meditating on what she'd seen, writing and rewriting, until she produced what many people consider the first book written in English by a woman. It's called Revelations of Divine Love. Julian's life was not serene. She lived through the Black Death, the plague that killed roughly half the population of England. She watched her world fall apart around her. She knew darkness, grief, and uncertainty at a scale that most of us cannot comprehend. And her theology, born of that darkness, carried one refrain that has held countless souls at their own Yule threshold. Julian said, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of thing shall be well." When I first encountered this line, I misread it. I thought Julian was offering reassurance, the medieval equivalent of, "Don't worry, it'll be fine." But that's not what she means. Julian is not saying that darkness will be brief. She's not promising the light will come tomorrow. She's saying something far more radical. The love of God is so fundamentally real, so structurally woven into the fabric of existence, that nothing, no loss, no grief, no unanswered prayer, no darkness can ever overcome it. All shall be well, not because nothing difficult will happen, but because the ground of all being is love. And love is capable of transforming everything, even when we find it impossible. Hope requires the whole of you. I want to pause here for a moment because I think the Yule threshold is one where we can slip into a posture that resembles trust without actually being trust. Genuine Yule trust is alive. It attends to what's present. It listens. It prays. It keeps the inner life lit. It practices the disciplines that create interior spaciousness, like honest prayer, silence, real conversation, time outside, so that when the new light comes, it finds a prepared soul. Do you know Viktor Frankl? He's a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps and whose work on meaning is one of the great gifts of the 20th century. He wrote something that has stayed with me for years since I read his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He wrote, "What is to give light must endure burning." He was describing the cost of bearing witness, the cost of carrying a torch for others in the dark. And I hear in that line a precise description of what we're talking about today. The light you are meant to carry, the vision, the vocation, the love you are growing into. The season of darkness is what forms it. I'd like to tell you about the winter that taught me how to trust in the dark. It was January 2020. Do you remember what winter felt like? The world stopped. Borders closed. Travel shut down entirely overnight because the pandemic broke out. I had just finished a 2-month silent retreat. 50 days of complete silence with no human contact. I came out of that retreat into the world, and within weeks, the world itself went into a kind of silence that no one anticipated. And here's what made it stranger for me. It was the first time in my adult life that I genuinely was living alone. No community living, no travel, no pilgrimages, just me in my flat with all that quiet. Maybe it was similar for you. Have you ever had something like that, where your life just stops suddenly? Not because you chose it, but because something larger intervened and you were forced to put down everything you'd been carrying and just be still? Maybe it was an illness, a loss, a transition you didn't see coming, a door that closed faster than you were ready for. For me, those first few weeks of the pandemic were disorienting. I kept reaching for the structures that had held my days together. The trip planning, the scheduling, and none of it was available. There was nothing to prepare for. And for me, the silence that I had been trying to fill gradually became something that I lived inside of. I started paying attention to the smaller things. The quality of the morning light. The chapel I would visit daily to light a candle. And how it felt different when I actually had time to sit with it, rather than rushing off to the next thing. Thomas Merton wrote, "The biggest human temptation is to settle for too little." I had been settling for my noisy, busy life because it felt like forward motion. And when I stopped, what I found was not emptiness. What I found was the ground. A steady, quiet, real spaciousness inside me. And from that ground, eventually, slowly, in a way that seeds grow, something began to form. Not because I planned it, but because I stayed present in trust. When I think about our Celtic shamanism in England pilgrimage, I think about this place called West Kennet Long Barrow. This is what the ancient builders of that barrow understood 5,000 years ago. West Kennet is a Neolithic chambered tomb in Wiltshire, just south of Avebury. It's one of the largest and oldest sacred sites in Britain. Enormous stones at the entrance, low chambers cut into the earth. The whole structure is aligned with the midwinter sunrise. On the winter solstice, the rising sun sends a single blade of light through the entrance passage and into the back chamber. The ancient people who built this did that on purpose. They engineered it so that once a year, on the darkest morning of the year, the community would gather inside the earth, sit in total darkness together, and wait for the light to enter. I've been inside that chamber many times, and what it does is very simple and very profound. It holds you. The stones are thick. The darkness is complete. There is no input, no news, no noise, no plans to make. There's only community and the silence and the waiting. You can hear your own breath and heartbeat. It's so quiet. And in that waiting, something in you loosens. The vigilance you carry without realizing you're carrying it. You know, that low-level alertness that most of us walk around with all the time. It softens. Because the only thing the darkness asks of you is to be present until the light comes. Those ancient people built a container for the Yule threshold. They said, "Come, sit, be still. The light will find you here." That is the invitation for you right now. Be attentive to your inner life. Stay present to what's forming without forcing it into premature shape. You are building the habit of trust in daily, ordinary increments. So ask yourself, what am I being asked to trust that I cannot see yet? Now, let's walk back through the whole arc of the wheel one more time, because in the last 8 episodes, we have covered a lot of ground. 8 thresholds, 8 seasons of the soul, a complete revolution of transformation. In episode 1, we spoke about Imbolc. We invited you to sense the first stirrings of something new forming beneath the surface of your life, the fragile beginning. Episode 2, the spring equinox, brought you to the moment of decision and movement. You confronted the courage to commit and step forward. In episode 3, we spoke of Beltane, joy as sacred, your soul's way of pointing you toward what you were made for. Then in episode 4, we spoke of the summer solstice. It asks you to stand in full radiance, to be seen, express, rather than perform. Episode 5 was about Lammas, which taught you to actually receive the harvest of your life, to take in what life is offering you, not just producing, but actually enjoying. Episode 6, the autumn equinox, brought the mature work of release, letting go of what has been completed without losing yourself in the process. Then in episode 7, we spoke of Samhain, and it led you into shadow, into the parts of your history, your inner life, your unfinished stories that need your compassionate, loving attention. And now, Episode 8, Yule, the Winter Solstice. This is the final threshold, the one that completes the circle. The longest night, the turning point, and the return of the light. Now, I have something personal to share with you before we close. These 8 episodes have been the audio version of the journey that I lead in person in the sacred landscapes of England, the Celtic shamanism pilgrimage, and this May will be the last time that I ever lead it. I've been bringing pilgrims here for 15 years. We've experienced Stonehenge at sunrise, the White Spring Cave, St. Nectan's Glen, that hidden waterfall in the woodland gorge where prayer ribbons have been tied to branches for centuries, Glastonbury Tor, Chalice Well, Avebury, West Kennet Long Barrow, and so much more. And I want to be honest with you about something. There's a real difference between hearing about these places on this podcast and standing inside them. This series of 8 episodes has given you the framework for the 8 seasons of the soul. But the land and the actual lived experience of the journey gives you the experience in your body and the connection to nature. The chamber at West Kennet Long Barrow isn't a metaphor when you're actually inside it in the dark, listening to your own heartbeat. The drum circle in Merlin's cave isn't a story when the sound is surrounding you and the birds are circling overhead. My friend, this pilgrimage runs for the last time, May 23 till June 2nd, 2026. And there is one spot left. One. So if you've been listening to these series and recognizing yourself at these thresholds, if England has quietly been calling you, if something in you is leaning forward, that's worth paying attention to. The registration link is in the show notes of this episode, and I would love to have you with us. Go to dancingspirittours.com. This is the last time, and there's one spot left. And if you feel something waking up inside you, that spot is for you. So, as we close this series, let me come back to the question that has run through every single episode. What is the threshold your life is asking you to cross? If it's Yule, if you're standing in a personal winter, in the in-between space where the old chapter has closed and the new one hasn't quite opened yet, here's what I want you to know. Those ancient people at West Kennet built a chamber so the community could wait together in the dark. They made this place exactly for you. They said, this is a necessary season. Come and be still. You don't have to force clarity before it's ready. You don't have to perform trust. Just practice it in small daily ways and let it do its work. Julian of Norwich wrote her "All Shall Be Well" in the middle of a plague. She didn't write it from a comfortable life. She wrote it because she sat long enough in the dark to encounter the ground beneath the dark. And that's the ground of love. And that ground is available to you, right here, in the middle of your winter. So stay present to what's forming. Trust the slow, real, reliable work of God. And you will know the light when it comes. My friend, trust the mystic within you.